Welcome to this episode of our book read through of Elon Musk, Woke Messiah by Elbion. We left off on this page. And it reads, most of the greatest evils that man has inflicted upon man have come through people feeling quite certain about something which in fact was false. Yes. Yeah, not being sure about what you know, but not letting it paralyze you. Something that Russell talked about, and that's makes sense. But especially before you take some great action that you know is going to cause harm, it seems like we should be overly sure about the accuracy of what we know about the situation. Then we have Elbion Blurred from 2049 that reads, we are all perfectly connected to each other, inextricably linked. Some influence us more than others, not always the nearest. However, everyone and everything play a part. Directly or indirectly, we are connected to every distant stranger. The factors that direct us are infinite, impossible to know. To believe we are our only directors would be ignorant. We are never completely isolated. We are never truly alone. An unwelcome realization to those with great pride in its success. A beautiful epiphany to the lost souls and confused masses. There is no you or me, only us. And in bold it says, we are all perfectly connected, inextricably linked, lost souls. This kind of goes back to that thinking ourselves as a larger organism. Yeah, we are linked. We do affect each other. So as far as praising people for successes or condemning people for failures to some degree, and probably varying degrees, that's on all of us, right? Interesting. Below that it says, hey Elon, what does an ideal society look like to you? Yeah, what does he want to see society look like? And then maybe more importantly, how do we get there? Elon always talks about asking the right questions and then coming up with those answers. What does that society look like? Next page, we have a statement that says the last non-fully autonomous self-driving cars are produced in 2056. The last non-fully autonomous self-driving cars. So that means the last cars that don't fully drive themselves, right? So like you wouldn't need a steering wheel after 2056. I can see that. I mean, it seems like we're progressing towards that. So maybe at that point or way before, they're way safer. So it becomes accepted or mandatory or Below that it says, man is not a solitary animal, and so long as social life survives, self-realization cannot be the supreme principle of ethics. That kind of goes back to that larger organism thing, I think. We're all connected. Then it says, Neuralink performs its 1 millionth implant in 2049. What was, Elon was the 1000th implant patient or customer. And then below that says Neuralink performs its 1 billionth implant in 2069. So what was that, like 1 out of every 5 or 6 people will have one in 2069? So that huge kind of exponential increase. And how will that affect our evolution? Should be interesting. Then we have a Bertrand Russell quote that reads, the fundamental concept in social science is power, in the same sense in which energy is the fundamental concept in physics. Social science is power. Yeah, you hear about that power or control or money because that represents maybe power and control. Um, and even, one-on-one interactions. I hate to think that, but I think you could construe anything um, into that equation, right? But does power have to be bad? Can power be used for good? Then we have the Albion blurb from 2050 that reads, "Our sight is a beautiful sense, a tragedy to lose. Although at times we see more clearly in the dark. Touch gives us a feeling of fact, feeling of truth. However, Satan can be as soft and enticing as silk. Smell and taste invigorate our carnal bodies, invigorate our minds, yet they dull and dampen the more they are used. Our ears are connected to our soul, sound bears truth. Hearing is gently sensitive to the most beautiful and abhorring. Our senses are complex and evolved, connected and beyond imitation, yet archaic and dreadfully unable to comprehend an endless universe." You talked about that before. I kind of like how he words it in this blurb. In bold it reads, "Our minds are complex and evolved, yet unable to comprehend an endless universe." Mm-hmm. And below that, it reads, "Hey Elon, what does an ideal currency system look like?" And in parentheses it says, "It looks like a dog." I'm sure referring to Dogecoin. Yes. How does that fit into the ideal society, maybe? Next page, it says, "The order of things and the time between things, and can?" And there's an extra and. "The order of things and the time between things can be just as, if not important than the things themselves." And in parentheses it says, "Agreed." "The order of things and the time between things can be just as, if not more important than the things themselves." Yeah, so if you have 10 events, how you order those events and the time between those events is going to have a massive effect on what the end result is. Yeah. So it kind of reminds me of when he's talked about like empty spaces. Sometimes the emptiness is as important or more important than the physical things you come across. You think about like a rocket going into space. You simplify that down to like 10 steps. They have to happen in a very specific order and at a very specific rate. Too much time between those steps or those steps in the wrong order and you're not going to get the result you want. It's kind of interesting. I think a lot of times I feel like people, they've gone through the same things, but if they went through them at different times of their lives, or maybe they had more or less impact because of when they happened, even though it was the same thing. Below that, we have the Albion blurb from 2078 that reads, "Would you know Satan if you could, his darkest self? To know the opposite of truth, to know pure evil, to know a darkness with a touchable, a tangible emptiness? Perhaps that would be better than where we currently exist, better than the state of limbo and disarray we experience. Perhaps easier to know perfect truth after finding perfect ignorance. We must journey through hell. Must we journey through hell on our way to heaven? At least this hell is a foundation to rise above, a foundation many of us do not have, flailing about. The risk, I suppose, is succumbing to hell's deceptive grasp." But in bold it says, "Must we journey through hell on our way to heaven?" Yeah, I think most people would choose not to go down that dark path. I think he's saying almost like, do you have a better idea of perfection or perfect knowledge after seeing the opposite? At least then you have like a stable point to work off of. Interesting. Then we have a Bertrand Russell quote that reads, "Do not feel envious of the happiness of those who live in a fool's paradise, for only a fool will think that it is happiness." Yeah, you're probably not going to see it the same way, but then are you jealous of the fool and his ignorance? Because is the end goal not happiness? I'm not sure. All right, we're gonna stop that episode there. Thank you for joining us. Join us for the next episode. Until then, have a great day.